we look at misfires, mistakes, and miscalculations from all throughout history.
I'm Tony Southcott.
And I'm Albert Berg. Tony has our bad idea for this week. What do you got, Tony?
This week we're going to be talking about Balloon Boy, which is
Sounds
actually
like
a local thing.
Silver Age hero from the comic books.
Yeah, I imagine that guy would just be able to throw balloons at his enemies and they just float off and suffocate in the high atmosphere.
Or maybe he turns into a balloon and that's... I don't know. It's the Silver Age, so it's beneficial for some reason.
Yes, for some reason. Maybe they just like the material. But this is actually a local thing to me because I am from Fort Collins, Colorado, and this is where all of the Balloon Boy incident originated.
All right. Tell us about it.
Let's start with the father in this case. His name is Richard Heene. Richard Heene is one of the strangest dads in America. He's an inventor, a reality TV star, / participant, and a storm chaser. He's racked up some patents and notable inventions like the Your Shakedown, which is a device that uses a hand crank that powers a lever to slap the bottom of your ketchup bottles to get every last drop out. It literally costs 6 easy payments of $29.99.
Okay, there's just a lot to process there.
There's a video if you want me to send the link.
I can imagine this. I can imagine this. I assume not recommended for glass ketchup bottles.
Probably not. It's just like a lever that just slaps the top of it on like a bunch of like rubber straps so it can move up and down a tiny bit. It's bizarre.
Also, are you going to at some point tell us which reality TV show?
He was on Wife Swap twice.
I don't know anything about that show, but the phrase "he was on Wife Swap twice," that's enough for me. I don't need to watch. I'm sure the reality is not nearly as horrifying as I'm imagining.
Well, Wife Swap is I only watched a couple episodes. Reality TV really isn't my thing, but I heard a guy from Fort Collins was going to be on, so I watched it a long time ago. And you basically just send your wife off to some other family, and it's culture shock because they always pair weird families with like a normal family, or people that are super religious with like some California family where the dad starts crying at the dinner table because he's so inspired by like doves being gay or something. So it always ends up being a very odd show.
Okay, I can actually get behind that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's
his wife was
moderately
the weird one.
Wholesome. His wife was actually pretty normal. His wife is actually a Japanese immigrant named Mayumi.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different no matter where she's going.
Tell us about Balloon Boy.
Richard Heene is also the architect behind the Balloon Boy incident of 2009. For those that weren't paying attention, Heene built a UFO out of foil and other materials like duct tape and used helium to make it float. This 17-foot wide, 6-foot tall UFO could carry about 65 pounds. He also stated that it was able to navigate by using a high-voltage timer in which the balloon would emit 1 million volts every 5 minutes in order to move left, right, or horizontal. It was a prototype for his idea on how to skip traffic.
I don't think any of that's real.
Oh, he put a high-voltage sticker, so, you know, it had to be true.
I know kind of where this story is going, and I know, like, some things about science. And I'm pretty sure that just sending a voltage through something does not move it.
Yeah.
Unless it's next to a magnet or like something else with other voltage going through it. Like don't at me about motors. I understand that. You can't just electrify some tinfoil and avoid traffic.
It's some wishful thinking. On October 15th, 2009, he was experimenting with the craft and forgot to tie the tethers of the balloon down. So he had a release cable. He filled this craft up with a lot of helium, which could not have been cheap. There was a lot of aluminum involved here. You see like 4 full-size canisters in his backyard. And his wife was supposed to tie the tethers, and she didn't. So when he hit the release cable and wanted to see it go up like 10 or 15 feet, instead it just floated away. At this point, you hear a string of curse words that can still be heard echoing through the Rockies right now. It was absolutely violent and sort of hilarious until you realize that one of his kids runs up to him screaming, "Falcon climbed into the balloon," over and over and over again. He was documenting his experiment, and it basically all went wrong, and he got it all on video. So at this point, he realizes that his son is probably inside of this balloon that is just wandering away. And he bolts inside the house, and this is actually something that the news gets wrong. The first call he makes is to the FAA because he thinks that they can track it. which they did actually help with tracking the balloon. The second one is to 911, and they put him on hold like 5 different times during this phone call, just trying to figure out if it was legit or not. And that's whenever he started calling news agencies. The news agencies, like CNN, reported that the first thing he did was call the news agencies and then called 911.
Did they report this because this guy has some reason not to be trusted, Tony?
That's part of it. He's always been trying different schemes to become very popular. It started with the storm chasing and just a lot of his inventions and the other things that he tries to do on YouTube and so on.
So they've heard from this guy before. Like,
I don't think the police had heard much from him, but it's a little bit different whenever he actually had his wife talking. So in somewhat broken English, she was saying that her son floated away, and it was a little bit garbled. And she was obviously in a state where she was not feeling so well. So it was a lot of like, what do we do about this sort of questioning? Like, you can look up some of the 911 calls that actually came from this incident.
Okay.
This is where things start to get squirrely. Most news sites, most notably CNN, who was covering this like the O.J. Simpson chase, started going full bore with the coverage. It was uninterrupted, multiple helicopter angles, people showing the initial videos on pretty much on loop and just waiting for this thing to land.
With, they assume, a dead body inside.
Yeah, they think that there's probably going to be a dead body inside. The balloon did get over 2,000 feet off the ground at one point.
Well, so, that's not impossibly high.
Yeah, like you're already talking about Fort Collins being at 5,500 feet. So add that, and you're in the 7,000 to 8,000 range, and that's not exactly like the kid's going to suffocate or something like that.
This reminds me of the and we might do this in a future episode, so I don't want to burn it too bad, but the guy who tied all of the balloons to his chair and floated up, and he got like in airliner territory where he was thinking he was going to get hit by a plane. So
yeah, and they probably took some things from that because a lot of planes from DIA were actually rerouted, especially because DIA's about 60, 70 miles from where I'm at, and the balloon had already drifted a very, very far distance. Like, it would end up traveling more than 60 miles before it would end up landing.
Okay.
They were worried about this because the kid was literally sitting on a piece of plywood, aluminum foil, and duct tape. Like, there really wasn't much keeping him in.
Was this intended to be pilotable? I mean, you said it was to avoid traffic. Was there like a seat in here that this guy was intending to fly in at some point?
Well, he said that this was a very, very early prototype. So it was mostly just a compartment for some tracking tools and some instruments.
Okay.
But a 37-pound kid is not a whole lot of, or doesn't take up a whole lot of space.
So what happened?
Anyway, the chase was on. 2 military helicopters were dispatched. Several news helicopters followed. The Colorado National Guard, local police, firefighters, FAA reps, and EMTs were dispatched as well. More than 50 people were chasing the UFO across Colorado. For a brief time, the internet exploded. The event filled all the top 10 search results on Google for a few days, and every national news service was giving uninterrupted coverage of the event. Memes were born, social media was on fire, and the Heene family was finally famous.
Not necessarily for the reasons they would have wanted, I assume.
No, definitely not. This would go on for more than 2 hours as the balloon lazily floated and spun. It would travel more than 60 miles, landing near Keensburg, Colorado. One of the rescue team ran up to the craft, stumbling over himself to get to Falcon as fast as possible. When he opened the door, the craft was empty.
Blah, blah, blah.
A sheriff's deputy claimed that he saw something fall from the balloon outside of Platteville, Colorado, and a picture surfaced with an indistinguishable black dot below the craft as well. It looked like the child had fallen from the balloon. The situation was dire, and rescue workers went from tracking the balloon to looking for a body.
Now, this only took 2 hours. When you were initially describing this to me, I thought this was a much longer incident.
And it seemed like it was, because everyone I know, especially because I'm from Fort Collins, was watching these events unfold, and it seemed like it was forever until this balloon finally got to the ground. And it was just so confusing whenever it was empty. Everybody just immediately thought that Falcon was gone.
Was Geraldo Rivera there to help out?
I'm sure that he would have been just as disappointed as whenever he opened Capone's safe and so on. But
yet another possible future episode idea.
at about 4:15, 5-ish hours after the whole event started, Falcon came down from the attic where he was hiding. According to him, he was scared by his father's reaction and went and hid in a box in the attic. The panic, the search, the news coverage had all been for nothing more than a personless balloon floating away.
I have been in the position of not knowing where my kid is for like 30 seconds, and I can empathize with a certain amount of panic here.
Yeah, there's definitely a necessary level of panic, but that's if this is actually what happened.
Okay, now I have not wanted to get ahead of you, Tony, but I do actually know a little bit about this story, and if I'm not mistaken, there are at least implications that the father might have not been so gullible as he first appeared.
Yeah. Before everyone could let out a collective sigh of relief, the rumors that this was a hoax started to take off. The next day, the family was being interviewed by Wolf Blitzer, and Falcon slipped up. Blitzer asked, "Why didn't you come out of the garage?" And after his parents repeated the question, he responded, "You guys said that, we did this for the show."
What?
6-year-old letting the cat out the bag live on CNN.
What show would this be that they said that they were doing it for?
Local Fort Collins Sheriff John Alderton said that we believe we have evidence at this point to indicate that this was a publicity stunt in hopes to better market themselves for a reality TV show. The Fort Collins Police Department began to pursue charges. It's estimated that the search effort cost more than $2 million, but that number came from Gawker, so I'm pretty skeptical on that one.
Yeah, you also have to think about how you're calculating those things. Like, are we talking man hours here? How many people lost productivity from people watching online? We can get any number we want to if we push hard enough.
Yeah, that lost productivity number is kind of slippery for me. I've never really fully believed those.
I believe them, but I just think if it's not one thing, it's going to be another thing.
Along with this, some scientists at the university did the math and found that Haney was lying about how heavy the balloon was, and that it probably could not have lifted 37 pounds. Like, first off, the balloon was about 18 pounds heavier, and it had less volume than he had calculated, so they weren't sure if that could ever have actually picked up Falcon to begin with.
That would seem like a pretty big hole in his story, although, if we assume it's not a hoax, he doesn't know this, right? In the version of this where it's not a hoax, he thinks it could pick up his kid. It looks like it could pick up his kid to him.
And, like, whenever you just see a balloon floating away and you don't know where your kid is, I could see why that would cause legit panic.
So how does this get resolved? Do we know for a fact what the resolution is? Or can we just go on the kid's words and assume, yeah, they put him up to it?
Well, they did plead guilty in court.
Okay.
So there is that, but there's some really interesting things that happen there. Like, I go back and forth if I think that this was actually just a publicity stunt, or if it was him being weird and doing a lot of crazy experiments like he always does, and this one just particularly going wrong. If I've seen Haney's commercials and the things that he's done for his products, and he is not a good actor. When the balloon gets loose, the anger is genuine. And police also obtained warrants to search his home. They scoured his computer. They scoured all of his notebooks, everything that he had in his house that could have been relevant, and they never found any evidence that it was a pre-planned hoax. Whenever they actually got the guilty plea from them, it was because they pulled his wife Mayumi into the police station and badgered her for several hours without a lawyer there, threatened to take her kids away through CPS, and to deport her. So there's a lot of people that think that she just basically pled guilty because of the pressure they were putting on her, because they needed to see something happen as far as charges for the search and for all the trouble they put everybody through.
Yeah, here's a fun little bad idea for you guys, just as a sidebar. Never tell the police anything without a lawyer present.
Yep.
It's a bad idea.
Very bad idea. Usually the justice system isn't fully out to get you, but don't implicate yourself off of something that you don't fully understand, because they're experts at what they're doing and you are not.
And they want a conviction sometimes. They don't necessarily want justice. I would like to propose a theory here, Tony, that rides the middle of this line. I think it's possible that when this thing gets loose and when he makes those initial calls, he is genuinely horrified and thinking that his kid is flying away in the balloon. And at some point, he finds out before the 9 hours, he finds out that his kid is okay, but he says, let's hold off. We've already set this whole firestorm off. Might as well get what we can out of it.
Yeah, because it's a much less compelling story if all of a sudden, like, the news networks pull their helicopters back and they're like, oh, well, he's not in the, like, he's safe at home. Let's just call this a story and be done with it.
I'm not here representing that as the truth, okay? But if we're spinning stories and that's really all we can do without being inside this guy's head, that one feels like a good story to me.
Yeah, that one seems like it could be pretty plausible. And there's some interesting things in which Falcon has said that he misheard the question and that he thought he was talking about another show where they were interviewed for, not like the show that they were currently on. I mean, it is a 6-year-old. Is a 6-year-old going to be paying attention like closely to like what Wolf Blitzer is asking him?
No, he will not. I can tell you, as the father of a 6-year-old, he's not paying attention to anything.
Yeah. But after the confession was levied, they were sentenced to 90 days in prison for Richard and 20 days for Mayumi and $36,000 in restitution. The official charge was trying to influence a public servant, and they were charged with that, and he pled guilty. There was a lot of thought that he got a better deal by pleading guilty. Also the fact that if you're trying to convince a bunch of jurors about your innocence, that there's going to be a thing stacked against you because almost everybody that was local was watching that live on TV. So you might not be able to get a good jury. So I imagine that he, instead of paying lawyer fees, instead of paying all this other stuff, it's better just to face a short sentence and get it done with than what could have happened.
Yeah, pleading guilty does not necessarily mean the person did it. Sometimes they just get a deal that's better than what they think they could get actually fighting it in court.
Yep. And to this day, Richard Heene insists that it was not a hoax, just an experiment gone wrong. Recently, the family moved to Florida. Now they're trying to become famous for having their 3 sons run a heavy metal band. The Haney Boys, spelled with a Z, have released 3 self-promoted albums and look absolutely like a parody band. It's 3 young boys clad in leather and long hair throwing devil horns. It's as absolutely fantastic as it is dumb. They have songs like Balloon Boy, No Hoax, Chasing Tornadoes, and Horror Talks.
Which area of Florida are they in, Tony? Can I go visit them?
Spring Hills, I want to say? I'm not actually sure where that is.
Doesn't sound like anything close to me.
Anyway, the bad ideas here are numerous. It starts with using a tether on your giant helium UFO and not tying it down. Then it goes to not exploiting your family for the hopes of your reality stardom. There's even some bad ideas about the news media not vetting their facts before jumping to conclusions as well. But mostly it's building a UFO in your backyard and not letting it fly away to cause a statewide incident.
Now, let's be clear here. Building a UFO in your backyard is always a good idea.
Yeah, I've got no beef with people making a UFO in their backyard. I think that's cool. More power to you. I want to see the specs on it, and I want to see how you did it. But maybe don't have your kids around and tie that thing down.
Also, some ancillary bad ideas about sort of the pressures of the justice system and public opinion and how quickly that can turn, which is a precursor to a lot of things I think we're dealing with a lot more today than maybe we did in the past because of social media and stuff.
And sometimes you're dealing with the idea of, like, do I give up my money or do I give up my freedom for a short period of time? It's weird with the justice system these days.
Yep.
So there's a lot that's going on here, and I just found this to be a fascinating local story that turned into kind of an international one, so I wanted to talk about it today. I think that's most of what I've got on Balloon Boy.
All right. Well, I guess that'll do it for this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you like this, don't forget to check us out over on Patreon, patreon.com/humanechoes. Send in your bad ideas. You can comment on the YouTube if you're over there listening. If you want to tweet us, we are at Human Echoes. Or you can send those bad ideas to badideasshow@gmail.com.
And we've actually been getting a few of those lately. I'm probably going to be doing one next week, so thank you guys for those suggestions.
We will see you guys next week with something else. Take care, y'all.
Bye.